Welcome to another episode of Money for Nothing, the podcast about music and capitalism. I'm Saxon with Sam Backer. We have returned, and we got a hot topic for you. We're talking about Spotify, but we're also talking about war and geopolitics and a band whose name I have not spoken in at least 20 years, Deerhoof. Wild, they're still around.
Good for though. I want to apologize. Talking about war, I do want to apologize in advance. The Lumineers are playing an enormous outside show near my house. So if you can hear something terrible happening, just audio off screen, it is the Lumineers, and I'm sorry.
I cannot hear them, so I don't think it's going to pick up, but that will be wild if the entire episode just has like the faint sounds of the Lumineers. Wait, did you see what happened at the last Lumineers concert in New York? Mr. Met got on stage. The guy threw him a tambourine. He dropped the tambourine, fell down, and then fell off the stage.
Does that mean there's going to be 4 more weeks of summer?
Means the Mets will lose again.
I mean, I didn't need like anything to happen to tell me that.
Facts.
Prove me wrong, God.
Baseball God. So what we're talking about is something that it's actually a topic I picked because it started showing up in my feeds, and then people started texting me, and they needed answers because they want to no longer listen to Spotify, but not for all the other reasons we've been talking about for the last 5 years, but rather because Daniel Ek, I don't know what his actual title is nowadays of Spotify, overlord of Spotify, apparently recently led an investment round of around over 600 million euros or dollars for a private German defense tech company. Basically, his explanation of that is that Europe needs defensive technology. And so the investment went into this company called Helsing. Apparently they're like valued now at something like 12 billion euros or something. And they use like AI, and they build drones, and they actually have already sent drones back in 2021 to Ukraine for the Ukrainian army to use. And yeah, a lot of people were up in arms about this. Milquetoast music critic Anthony Fitano was railing against them into a mic with a very close camera engulfing his entire face with absolutely zero critical take whatsoever, just saying Spotify is bad, essentially, war is bad. And then Deerhoof, who...
I mean, in fairness, both of those... True.
Yeah, true. Definitely. No, we totally support that, but that's...
This podcast actually pro-war.
Yeah.
Clearly, those are both true
We are
statements.
actually also funded by Palantir. Yeah, I mean, right, great take, whatever. I mean, no take, really. Just being like, Spotify sucks. Like, now Daniel Ek, this overlord, which nobody likes, is now investing in defensive technology and drones.
Specifically defensive AI technology.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then... Deerhoof, like 35-year now running indie rock band, I don't know, 20 years or whatever, announced that they're pulling their music from Spotify because they don't support war. And then they continue to post a number of other like 20 carousel all text posts on Instagram.
In fairness, they call it a novel.
Yeah.
in the thing, they're like, this novel is based on.
Yeah, no, and there was, yeah, exactly, yeah. And I mean, you maybe could sum it up better than me, but it seemed to just generally like rail against AI technology, American imperialism. There was some stuff about how like Ukraine is being used as a testing ground for like new kinds of warfare. Anyways, they're pulling their music from Spotify because of this. Fine, that's their right. But I thought that this topic would be interesting because it seems to me that music fans have probably never faced, like, since the actual development of physical like music and albums, that a period of time when they faced like so many ethical quandaries about just wanting to like listen to music. And then I had friends hitting me up being like, I don't want to support Spotify either. Like, this is even worse. Like, what's the alternative? And I'm like, So I told somebody, I'm like, I guess like if you really want to pick the lesser of all the evils, I guess maybe title question mark. I mean, Jack Dorsey, who I guess is like owns title now, or like is like major stakeholder or something.
He's back from his ayahuasca trip.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, this guy seems pretty, as far as like Silicon Valley tech bros go, he seems the most agreeable. Not that I would want to hang out with this guy or listen to any of his playlists on Spotify. Oh, I'm sorry, Tidal. Or like really any, do I trust him? But like amongst all of them, like, I mean, and I actually couldn't find anything about him investing in any kind of military technology. I'm sure he has in probably some way, like if you checked his Vanguard portfolio. But yeah, I don't know. The point is, I think it just brings up like a number of like interesting, like kind of ethical questions about like, is there really an ethical way to like listen to music and stream, or in this reified reality shaped by capitalism, is it just a big LOL if you're trying to do that? So I don't know where you want to start with this. I mean, like I kind of gave the background of like the situation. I mean, we can dive into that a little bit. I mean, obviously there's reasons why Daniel Ek is investing into this. I mean, like Trump is like asking NATO countries to...
Yeah. No. Maybe that's a good place to start. Because I think there's one thing, there's a couple things that's interesting here, right?
Right, yeah, definitely.
And I think this is it's at the confluence of a lot of different things. That's really interesting.
Which is kind of unusual for like music, and I think, at least in like the topics that we talk about.
So, I mean, for one, I do feel like... So maybe a good place to start with is, I feel like there's a lot of, on the left, and there was like a spectacularly like right-hearted and poorly thought through in these Times article about this.
Oh God!
Where it really didn't conceptualize the relationship. Daniel Ek is not Spotify. Spotify is a publicly traded company.
Right.
Spotify is also not responsible for everything that's on it, though some things that are on it, like Joe Rogan, it owns. Though I think we're like, the discourse is back around to like maybe being pro Joe Rogan after 2024, or like people should go on it. It's not as deplatforming about Joe Rogan as it used to be. I feel like that's neither here nor there.
Neil Young's
probably
back on Spotify, so apparently he's okay with Joe Rogan now.
With Joe Rogan,
Joe made a call.
Yeah.
Joe and Neil made a call. They had a beer. I don't know.
You know what? That would actually be like Joe Rogan on Neil Young is a funny idea.
I have to apologize, but I have to say this. I don't know if I've already said this on this podcast before, but regardless of what people think about Joe Rogan, I have a friend who used to bartend in Austin, and Joe Rogan used to come in, and first thing he'd do would buy everybody in the bar around, and then he would always tip 100%. So Joe Rogan, you don't have to like him. It's fine by me. You don't have to like whatever the fuck his politics are, but you got to give him that.
Unlike Elon Musk, who definitely does not tip well. Right. No. Okay. So there's this one thing, which is like a question about where do we draw the lines of moral culpability in capitalism? Right.
That's at the crux of all this.
Like, how do we imagine actions like functioning? There's this neat article by this historian of the early modern Atlantic, Thomas Haskell, about Quaker abolitionism that argues that the Quakers who lead the abolition and anti-slave trade movement in England are able to do so, he argues, as part of like the emergence of capitalism, because they're able to like think through the steps that like connect their sugar to Barbadian slavery, and understand that if you're able to set up companies that go that far, you're also able to like boycott them. That there's he argues there's a new moral vocabulary that emerges out of the newly expanded action potentials of capitalism in early modernity. And I've always thought about that because I feel like, I'm not sure if it's true, and like, get at me, early, scholars of Atlantic history. since I was in grad school, unclear if those articles hold up. But the reason I bring it up is because I've always thought that, like, one of the tricky things about contemporary capitalism that's partially structural and partially by design is that it's taken that ability to conceptualize large-scale relationships, right? And made it so complicated and enmeshed everyone in so many chains and links and subcontractors and investment portfolios that you're enmeshed in this bloody web no matter what you do, right? And so I do think there is a kind of interesting moral question at a very basic level, is like, Daniel Ek has a lot of control over Spotify. Daniel Ek has a lot of money. Spotify is not investing in AI weapons tech. Daniel Ek has made a personal fortune, including selling his Spotify stock at a recent high point, and then using it to fund these other investments. And Daniel Ek did start Spotify, but Daniel Ek is not Spotify. So there's a question of, like, how do we think about corporations, especially in this kind of, like, return to robber barons tech moment where, like, put it this way, in 1960, GM is a huge company. Maybe you hate the CEO of GM, but GM is, like, not the CEO. GM is a company
with, like, employees,
but because of Silicon Valley tech, with employees and a board that actually does stuff and stockholders and this idea that
it could be even worse than the CEO. Also, on the flip side of it,
no. It often was, but it's this idea, this mid 20th century idea of capitalism that, like, corporations are entities that transcend the interests of any one person in them. That's the whole idea of fiduciary interests, right? They are supposed to think first and foremost about the interests of their stockholders. But, like, in Silicon Valley, you have all these founders who have control over their companies, even though they are private, like, publicly held, which means that line of, like, is Daniel Ek Spotify or not, is a more complicated one than maybe it would have been 50 years earlier. But it is like this funny thing where, like, if you are punished, if you want to do a massive boycott and bring Spotify to its knees, like, Spotify didn't do this. Daniel Ek did this, and Daniel Ek is also related to Spotify. And I don't know what you think about that, but it's an interesting, like I don't know how many other kinds of companies, like, if you start chaining people together like that, how it works.
Yeah, I mean, that gets really complex, right? So then your argument would then have to be that Daniel Ek makes majority of his money through the success of Spotify, and that's how he's able to then cash out and then invest into these defensive tech companies, which is why I kind of make the suggestion, quote unquote defensive tech. Right. Which is, like, also why I kind of make that suggestion tongue in cheek, where I'm like, I mean, Jack Dorsey's probably just using his money to, like, have really crazy ayahuasca trips in, like, Peru. So, I mean, if you want to support that, but I do see the stretch there. So let me ask you this. So why would that matter, though? I mean, like, because answer my question, like, if Daniel Ek makes money through Spotify primarily, then, like, does it matter if there's, like, a separation between Ek and Spotify?
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is it's indicative of a change in how these corporations function in our imaginations, right? It is this funny thing in our current contemporary moment of capitalism that from corporations getting ever bigger and ever more impersonal, there is this, like, and I don't really love the techno-feudalism discourse. I don't find it particularly persuasive, but there is this interesting thing with, like, it's resolved to one guy, right? I'm saying
right. Right. And it is interesting that the complaint about Spotify, which has been pretty much the same for, like, the last, like, 15 years about its payouts and how it doesn't, all the things that we've talked about, and how, like, bands don't make money and can't make a living off of it, and the payouts are like pennies, all that stuff. it is funny how like in this situation the conversation rather switches to something else. It's like, well, we already hate this guy, so like let's kind of find something else to hate him about, and maybe that will make like an impact, which is interesting. But it's interesting though that then my friends or like other people, perhaps Deerhoof, is like looking then for alternatives where it's like now suddenly, okay, you're not against streaming, like the streaming itself is fine, you're just looking for a more ethical platform that like will invest into things that are promote not drone warfare but promote ? It's like
I do think also, and this is like my before we get onto that, because I think that's an interesting question too, right? Like, can there be any ethical consumption under capitalism? The classic like that old like dog and pony show, which all often actually like it's funny, like as a scholar of American entertainment, I don't know what that is, but I bet a dog and pony show is awesome. Like, do they do tricks? Like, I bet it's sick. Dogs are great, ponies are great. Like, I bet a dog and pony show is really good.
Probably don't like each other, but can you make them like each other?
Yeah. I bet you could make them like each other.
Yeah. Okay, you continue what you're saying. I'm going to Google dog and pony show.
No, but I do think that, like, and this is my take on what the Deerhoof thing, because I do think it's worth like thinking through what they're saying a little bit. Not only is AI, I mean, it's very powerful for certain things. It's vastly overhyped for others. It is taking up a huge environmental impact, but also like its use in battlefields is emerging as a leading vector for AI development, and it is really difficult to overstate how dangerous that is. It's like we didn't see the Terminator at all. Like, we're gonna, like, it's like we really, like, we're just like, that was a great movie, so let's definitely make it happen. No, but like the ability to automate murder, automate killing, and then the potential power that has, where like you don't even potentially need, like, it's weird to say this, but like the popular buy-in required to have an army anymore is crazy. It's extremely dangerous. Right. And there is a little bit of this where, caught in our current moment, there is a little bit of an arms race thing that none of the major companies on Earth probably want some of what might come out of this, but they can't afford to be behind the ball on any of this, so they're all just rushing forward. And the whole situation is made even more chaotic by the fact that so much of this is being driven by secretive tech companies that quite literally have goals like making it so some people never die and ending humanity ? Peter Thiel. And right. So all of that does make this incredibly dangerous situation. I think it's not like the changes that are starting to take place in warfare, the changes that are being figured out in places like the battlefields of Ukraine and Lebanon and Gaza and Iran, where like new things were like in both. My youngest brother told me about this, and so hat tip to Saul Backer, but like the thing where like in both the Israeli strike on Iran and a recent Ukrainian strike on Russia, there was a thing where what they would do is teams would rent a building, smuggle in drone parts, build drones in the country, and then attack from the like warfare is changing in insane ways, and some of this is grifting and some of this is transformative, and like none of this is good transformations. We're entering
and we can all agree on that. Like, that's like
right. No, but like it's worth like really thinking about, and this is where I feel like an interesting thing that Deerhoof is doing is saying, I think for me, what Deerhoof did there was kind of powerful because they're saying they're drawing connections that people otherwise wouldn't have made, and they're using people's cultural engagement with music to make them think about other kinds of issues. We've talked a lot about consumption under capitalism, right? And like, is it possible to consume ethically under capitalism? And like, maybe yes, probably not. But maybe that's the wrong question, actually, in terms of like, what the most ethical thing to do in terms of music. And the idea that where politics is at the level of the consumer, and we've talked about this a lot before, like maybe that's a dead end. It can be powerful, but it often isn't. There's just, it's too much of a complicated system. So instead of saying the power is at consumption, what you can do, though, and it does seem potentially more effective, is use consumption as a way to make symbolic action, right? And so for me, what Deerhoof is doing is less like Deerhoof, a band that last time I checked is like not tearing up the charts, is like a solid, stalwart, weirdo indie rock band with an incredible drummer. Or if he's still the drummer. I don't know if he's still the drummer. If the original drummer of Deerhoof is still the drummer of Deerhoof, he's an incredible drummer. Right, but there's a question of like, the other thing that you could say he's doing is like using the fact that all in our modern capitalism, all of these things are connected to make people feel a relationship between music, something they care about, is very immediate to them, and their opposition to AI warfare, something that's like much further away.
I mean, that's just like the awareness argument, basically. Because in the end, it's like, I mean, and this is the thing that like I like come back. I mean, I think that's all great. I mean, sure, like use a platform, any platform, use deplatforming as your platform. I mean, let alone the irony of like getting off Spotify and then having a 20 carousel thing on Instagram, which of course, as we all know, Meta is not involved in any of this shit at all. So I mean, but I mean, I also don't want my arguments or let's say I don't want my observations here at the irony of all this to then be like a response to your point, because I think that you make a good point, right? Like but in the end, it's like, I guess it comes back to that thing where I think making those connections and making that awareness is great, and like taking a stand is like admirable, I guess. But in the end, it's like, doesn't it just sort of like further emphasize the helplessness of a band like Deerhoof and all the rest of us who are just trying to like chill and listen to music? Like, what now? I have to feel even more guilt about having a Spotify account. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And no, but the funny thing, right? But then the irony of it is, in the end, this just comes back and kind of supports capitalism, right? Because if you get off of Spotify and you're already not making any money, how are you going to listen to music? You can't afford to buy it anymore. Like, we don't need to like talk about like the cost of living going up. I mean, we're not talking about like you, me, or like, Liz Pelly here. We're talking about like people who are just like kind of like music fans, but somewhat passive consumers of music, who are texting me and commenting on these like posts and being like, what's an alternative? Because honestly, they don't want to have to think about it. And they also probably don't have the money to go like build a record collection, which also is problematic in some ways as well if you're buying new vinyl, like in regards to the environment. But like, and I mean, it almost, and like I said, it's that same old dog and pony show. It just spirals, and it just, what can you do? And in the end, it just kind of exposes for like the hopelessness of, or not the hopelessness, the sort of toothlessness of like what we can do about any of this. It kind of gets exposed, but then it's like, in the end, it's like, it just makes people feel worse. And I'm not saying that that's a reason why they shouldn't do it, but that is kind of like the result of this. And I mean, and then it's also kind of just weird because it's like, why do I need to feel worse? I mean, I'm just like playing the devil's advocate here, but like, why do I need to feel worse about listening to music on Spotify opposed to like posting on Instagram or something else, which is just doing just as worse horrific shit probably than fucking Daniel Ek investing into a military tech company. And I think it's also important also to just back up a little bit and give some context here that like Donald Trump, which I'm also pretty sure is somebody that like Deerhoof did not vote for and does not like, and a lot of these music fans who are hitting me up, is going to the EU and being like, you need to invest more into defense here in Europe because we're not going to fit the bill anymore. And so that's also like what's happening is that sure, it's an investment opportunity for Daniel Ek because there's going to be like already is like a massive rush on building military technology and defense systems and all these startups in Europe because of what's happening with like Trump and the EU, right? And also because there's a war happening in their backyard in the Ukraine, right? So, but I mean, so regardless of like, obviously there's an investment opportunity there, but in the end, it's also because of the fact that like Europe is trying to slightly decouple themselves from the reliance on the United States. Yeah, so things get a little more complicated here, and so what if you're like pro-Ukraine, and this company is sending drones to Ukraine? I mean, like I know that like Deerhoof addressed this in their like 30-page carousel or whatever, but I mean because it's also being used as an experimental battlefield, and they actually called out Zelensky.
It was a good carousel.
Yeah, no, it was, and they also called out Zelensky for like not being like it's not a democracy anymore. He like all that stuff, but like put that all aside, it's like there is other context to this. It's not just like a Peter Thiel or a Mark Zuckerberg just absolutely just investing in like the worst amount of like surveillance and like military tech as possible. I mean, there is like some like, oh shit, we need to arm ourselves, otherwise like we're vulnerable. As speaking from a European standpoint.
No, which is bad, right?
Bad. No, which is a bad thing, which nobody wants to do.
No,
it's like kind of what the situation
is. A world
is.
In which Europe like take all the like the EU flags, all the little stars, like all you want, but historically, an armed Europe has done terrible things to the world. And like I'm actually like I know that like it's this moment right now where it's like people are kind of rooting on the left or vaguely rooting for the EU because it can like as a force that could like stand up to a Trump-led
Zizek
US.
suddenly becoming like a centrist, like pro EU figurehead.
No, but like I think it's important to note that like if you roll back the clock for the last quarter, like half a millennia, an armed Europe has been bad for much of the world.
No, completely.
And so like
nobody wants this.
Yeah.
Right? Like I totally get it, but it just and then the point isn't so much to get into like a geopolitical debate about whether or not like Europe should be armed or not, but it is important to like at least give the context of that it's like a little bit more complicated than just like the horrific things that like Peter Thiel has in mind, or but like it's slightly kind of, you know, right?
Here's the thing.
And in the end, but like answer the question about like I want to know like what is the consumer supposed to do then? Like what is the music listener supposed to do in this situation, right? And it's like, and why does like, and like I understand the idea of like using the platform, deplatforming, and using another platform to then speak and give awareness to like why you're getting off Spotify and the horrors of like the Daniel Ek as a person and all that, and drone warfare and American imperialism and all that, right? I get it, right? But like, then what?
Listeners, little known fact: Saxon actually is a drone, so this all cuts close to him. This is close to home.
No, and I'm empathetic to. I am empathetic to the ethical quandary here. I really am. Then this is why we brought it up. I'm extremely empathetic to the person who is like just trying to listen to music and not feel terrible about it.
I guess the thing is this, right? For me, it's a question of what politics are. Honestly,
Yeah.
right? I think that the 60s vision of consumer politics, which ties to the personal is political, which ties to eventually to neoliberalism, right? That hasn't done much. Full stop. It's had a couple of wins. The Cesar Chavez boycotts worked okay, right? The anti-apartheid boycotts worked okay. Okay. I mean, I think that sometimes their efficacy is overstated, but like, were an important factor. I think boycott and divestment has clearly been, given how much people who oppose it freak out about it, is like hitting nerves. So but for the most part, consumer-based politics has not been a very effective way of locating the political, right?
Exactly.
And in a society in which that is the space in which the political is located, it makes it very difficult to do politics.
Right.
And if So I think a question is like, what's the relationship between music and politics? When music has mattered politically, what is its relationship to politics? And I don't think that it tends to be a relationship that the music industry qua industry, right? Like that's how it matters. And I think that the kind of, you could say, like the simplified form of culture change.
Yeah.
Because actually I believe in the idea of culture change quite a bit, right? The idea that so much of our world is downstream of the culture that we engage with, and especially in contemporary capitalism, the culture that we consume. And so that doing that cultural change can change people's minds. I've got a fair bit of time for that argument. But I do think there can be like a simple culture change argument, and that simplified culture change argument can then be kind of very easily twisted back into kind of almost like a gamified consumer relationship with entertainment industries. Like, instead of saying we should change culture so that politics can happen in, around, and outside of this very specific streams of commodified entertainment, it's very easy to slip into a thing where politics is done by changing the culture. And so like the revolution is an all-female rock and roll Hall of Fame slate of nominees. Like, that's the goal. Not, you know what I mean? Or like that specific kinds of changing the mechanisms of this culture in and of itself is enough. Like, don't get me wrong, it'd be fucking amazing if there was an all-female rock and roll Hall of Fame slate. That would be absolutely incredible. But I think that it wouldn't change things. It would reflect changes that had already happened. So if you focus on symbolic changes for the symbolic change, I think it can get that logic twisted.
Right.
So a question about like how politics relates to music, for me, it's instead of like that simplified culture change, right? The way to change culture is by changing these symbols, and that can be part of it, but it's, to me, it's not enough usually. The more complicated version is kind of like a structures a feeling thing, right?
Right.
Music is mattered politically when, and this is very hard because it's not quantifiable and it's not particularly reducible and it's not linear, but it's when music and the cultures around music and the incredible embeddedness and the intensity of people's experiences with music, when that allows politics to happen and the music becomes the kicking off point for politics, which then exceeds just music and the music industry and the commodified music industry in and of itself. So you could say like grime and some of the urban disturbances in England in the like 2008 to 2012 or whatever. You could argue maybe the 60s, some of that stuff, especially in other countries, like besides the US, where like 68 went really, truly hard.
Right. Or maybe even some like it could even some of the stuff that I did in Jamaica when I was kind of like about the late 70s and early 80s, like relationship between music and politics and the elections that were going on.
Or black power music in parts of the US in the early 70s, like that in that like is reflected in the music industry, right. But like it's the music allows stuff outside of the music to happen, and I do wonder if something like this Deerhoof carousel is at least gesturing towards that, in this saying like it's not a direct relationship, but it is using music to make you aware of this broader set of things.
Sure. I mean, I agree with all that. I think that's like a bit of a stretch, but I do like, I mean, generally like, I mean, its effect, I find it a stretch, like how much it actually, like makes any kind of real difference. But I also just think that like in our current reality, it feels even more unlikely. And it feels like the ability for that. I mean, if I can understand what you're saying correctly, it's like the sort of awareness happens in the safe space of music, and then that sometimes will like branch out into like greater society because like people have become like are doing like the politics that they want to see within these communities, or the resistance they want to see, or
that the experiences that they have in and around music allow them to see and articulate changes they want to see more broadly.
Right.
Like I'm not saying like Fugazi fans as like the core of the anarchist society. Like they'll go off and form like anarchistic polycules because they pay $10 at a Fugazi show. What I'm saying is like the experiences that you have in relationship to art and culture can then let you see, or let a bunch of people together experience the world in different ways. That can relate to politics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sure. I mean, at that point,
if you just say structures of feeling 3 times fast, it makes sense.
No, I mean, I generally get what you're saying, but nonetheless, it feels like almost now, and this isn't an argument against it, but like it like just a response rather, is that it just feels like at this point so toothless, like I said earlier, where it's like you're just posting on Instagram about something that we already all obviously don't want. This isn't like about like black rights in the 60s reaching like, you know, middle class like white Americans. This is like, yeah, nobody wants a fucking drone war other than like the fucking psychos in Silicon Valley, right? I will say that it is nice to see even a small polite indie band like Deerhoof like railing into like American imperialism and all that. That's great. I love that, right? But and I do think that in some ways music has become, I'm curious what you have to say this, like whether or not music has become like more apolitical, like maybe in the last 25, 30 years. But like the point being is, I mean, I do appreciate that gesture, right? But then really what it does for most listeners is just put them into this like sort of moral and ethical quandary. Like, great, knowledge is great. Like it's glad that they're becoming aware of this, and now they have talking points to talk with whoever about and envision the change they want to see or some shit. I don't know, but like and I'm not, like I said, this isn't an argument against what they're doing or against like get off Spotify. I don't give a fuck Spotify, right? But what ends up happening is that you kind of like you hit a dead end with it, and it's like, where do you go from there? And like maybe you don't hit a dead end, but like that's kind of reasons why we're having this conversation is like, what is the alternative and what can it lead to? And particularly maybe to bring it back to like, you know, in regards to music itself, right? And it's funny, like, if you just think about me just trying to answer the question of my friends, like, what's an alternative? And what was crazy to me, how many people were saying YouTube music, and I'm like, hello. Do you fucking know who owns YouTube? What the fuck? Like, which is just so wild to me, right? But that also brings up something interesting too, because I mean, I think Google does a good job, Alphabet, like of like hiding behind this sort of Wizard of Oz type curtain where like Daniel Ek is like out there as like an identifiable figure, and so we can like check out his portfolio and like figure it out. But you know, Google Alphabet's secretive or whatever. It's not so out there, all the horrible fucked up things there are. I mean, I guess it is out there, but I don't know, people aren't aware of it. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like we hit a dead end with all this, and like I'm actually kind of asking the question, like, it's not an argument against what Deerhoof did. Great, fuck it, do what you do, and I appreciate the gesture. Right. But in the end, it is a gesture. And then
we're talking about it.
And I think, yeah, exactly. And I think that it's wonderful that like people, my friends are actually talking to me about it, or like people, and like great that like Tony Fontano is like out there talking about it. Good. He wants to talk about that. That's good. But then what? Right.
But I guess the thing,
and that's, I mean, and we feel like we've been talking about it for the last 30 years.
Well, I guess the thing for me is that like, and then what? And
better to be talking about it than not talking about it?
Yes. B, like, think about what all this help training AI, unpaid AI training we're all doing. No, but also, like, to me, I feel like, and this is the thing about how enmeshed we are in this, like, what next? And that what next has to be politics. It can't just be, like, consuming a better way. Because like there is no good way to consume this stuff, and so for me it has to be about like,
so stop doing politics through it.
Stop trying to do politics through music consumption. Like it's not working.
Right, exactly. Right.
And like
Right, exactly.
like you can
Like get off Spotify or don't get off Spotify, but like be aware of like what's happening in the world outside of that.
Yeah, and like take that energy and that anger, and instead of saying like, "Oh, I posted the right thing in a corporate thing," make it's like frustrating, like to feel like you feel like Gulliver, right? Where like he's just being like with all the little Prussians, right? They're all like all over him,
Yeah,
like
right.
holding him down. Like that's your relationship to these things. Like you can't get free
Right.
of any of these companies because they're all bad, and B, they're everywhere. Every little thing you do, and so being aware
and
of
also,
that,
I mean, maybe
it seems valuable. And then like, I feel like what the thing to do is be frustrated, and then like, I don't know, when there's a primary, ask what their tech policy is.
Right. But it is interesting though, because I think also the reason why like I kind of rail against this kind of stuff is because of the fact that it does make people feel like they are doing something, but they're just like contributing right back into capitalism, because like getting off of like Spotify and going onto Tidal or YouTube Music or whatever is just like a different shade of the same thing. But somebody might then feel less ethically like in a quandary until they read up on Alphabet.
Sure. I mean, I do think like, getting out of capitalism. It's like, what does that even mean at this? Like,
no.
At any point in the last 200 years, like, there's no outside of the box that is pretty much everything. But you could say, like,
exactly.
Out of Silicon Valley is a different question.
Which means going to the library and going to live shows and listening to the radio, right? I mean, I say it kind of tongue in cheek, but that does seem to be the least ethically problematic if you really want to talk about like actual alternatives to their to streaming, which is like, disappointing.
Face the reality that there's no safe spaces. There's
Absolutely.
And all of your money is being put for these terrible things that are training AI Terminators.
Right.
So the question is, what are you going to do about that? And I just feel like being like, oh, I decided to spend enough money to change my subscription to something that trains AI Terminators a little bit less efficiently. It's just like, or it's like, call your representatives and be like, I'm mad at it. Hey, I got a swing senator right now.
True. Yeah, crazy.
I call up Susan Collins and say just like whatever, and I just go, I just feel like I didn't vote for this. I just feel like I didn't vote for this, which is true, but like
right. Going back, but like on that point, I think this is really great. Like this is the one thing that I think I do have the complaint, not to keep railing on Deerhoof, but just they're like the voice of this kind of leading the charge, is that in that 40 thing carousel, they do say like nowhere on the website or anywhere online does it say that Helsing defense tech will not use it on innocent people or something. And I'm like, yeah, of course fucking not. Like that's not the place to be looking for that. Like that's not.
Well, it's because Daniel Ek is saying like, oh, we're doing it to help the Ukrainians against Russia.
Right. But the thing is, I mean, like at this point,
like, it's the German defense industry. We know we know that they
Well, it also kind of reminds me of like this really great meme that you might have seen I think it was a tweet where it was like railing against millennials and like internet literacy, and it's like, yo, if you can't like spot like a deep fake and like are reading like Facebook news still, like what is your what is your problem? Like obviously this should be obvious at this point that we can't trust any of these companies, and you're not gonna like create a better world by like demanding that they make internal bylaws that promise you things on a website. Like what the fuck?
No. But bigger. I think there's worlds in which everyone's like, oh, okay, Daniel Ek, cool, and a world in which Daniel Ek's getting pressure for this. It matters a tiny little bit.
Right. Right. Okay. So
And
now
until democracy is finally crushed by the mecha soldiers they're currently building, which is like real, right? Like what's the future of democracy? Like if you don't need an army of people, but until that democracy finally does go away, like it's very hard to know what like the little political actions, a version where you're getting fire for this. Daniel Ek, put it this way, Daniel Ek doesn't care that much, but he would rather Deerhoof hadn't done this.
Yeah, fair. For sure.
He's not pro. Yeah. He's not like sick. Great, I got another round of bad press.
Yeah, completely. Okay, so what's your alternative here? Okay, what's your moral alternative? Listening to the rock station that Stephen King owns.
Oh, yeah. They're also the company that owned he sold it finally.
Oh, okay.
But it's still open. But it was called The Zone. Was the one that.
Hell yeah.
Rock of Bangor. No. I mean, let's be real here. Like, it's not like the original radio stations were like so great. Like RCA. Yeah. Like... Okay, so I was thinking about this. And I do wonder about whether we're starting to get to a place where you could build alternatives.
Right.
Just because like some of these systems and some of are easier to build, ironically enough, because of AI. And this is kind of like the I think one of the questions about AI generally that we don't know yet. And I've been thinking about this for a couple of years now. Which is that AI is the explosion of these models into the public, and the attempt by these companies to get people to use them so they can make an infinite amount of money. Or not an infinite amount of money. It's like 100 billion. It's really funny. It's like in the contract between Microsoft and OpenAI, the definition of AGI is like a company that makes X amount of money. Yeah, like that's the definition. But my point is that it's not like there weren't forms of artificial intelligence that have been shaping our world for a really long time. But the explosion of these new large language models, the clear advances that have been made in recent years, mean that they've like started to spill out into public hands, right? At the same time, the very cutting edge ones are even further advanced. So to me, there is this like balancing question is like, does the expansion of these models further centralize power? Or is it like, oh, everyone has electricity now. And like you can, instead of just like the factory owners having electricity, like you can start your own little business.
No, so it just makes me wonder like why can't there just be like an open source or like not another side like why can't there be a platform? A
federated platform? I don't see why not, to be honest. Like,
right, and it's like, listen, we only take the cost to operate, and everything else goes right back into the fucking pocket of like the.
Well, so you could do that, right? Artist. But to me, the problem with that is, for me, what I always call the Rolling Stones problem, or the Britney Spears problem. Pick your generation, right? Which is that. The benefit of the celestial jukebox, once it's no longer physical objects, right? Once you've got the kind of celestial jukebox, the added utility of being able to play, I don't know, Sun City Girls, right? Like some weird avant.
Sick.
Yeah. Yeah. Being able to go have a playlist that's just alternating Sun City Girls and Cyndi Lauper is huge, right? That's like in some ways like the access to all the music. And so I really do think as soon as you have to go and remember what website all the music's on, that's not it's not 2003. I'm not like going between like Fluxblog and like some other, Sparkle and Glisten.
What was another one?
Sparkle and Glisten. I remembered another
one. Tiny mixtapes, whatever.
Who just recently ended. They were like survivors.
Right. I know, crazy.
Right. So the fact that you can't move between, it's not 2003. You're not going to like go from place to place to place anymore, right? So I've always felt that the inability to move between those was like the thing that killed it. But I do wonder now whether, and I was thinking about this as I was kind of preparing for this episode, I wonder whether you could build a federated system, right? Like I could almost imagine how to do this, where especially if there people had like micropayment things, right? So either I have, or in a slightly more illegal version, like you and I and a group of people share a Spotify subscription, some other subscriptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then also in our monthly budget is micropayments to all these other artists. So then you have one interface that searches really quickly using AI for so I go Sun City Girls, and Sun City Girls has their own Bandcamp or their own thing, right? That pays directly to Sun City Girls. And that way so when I have the playlist of Sun City Girls, Cyndi Lauper, Sun City Girls, Cyndi Lauper, the Sun City Girls thing is being fed to me via their website.
Right, or their website.
And Cyndi Lauper is being fed to me via Spotify. There's some buffering issues there. There's some weird things there, but like I feel like Groove Shark was kind of like this, and that everyone kind of uploaded their
always
tracks.
Comes back to Groove Shark.
Dude, Groove Shark was amazing. But I don't know.
But what about just an actual like an alternative platform?
But why is Cyndi Lauper on there?
No, I think that like Cyndi.
Why is Warner Bros? I don't know if Warner Bros has Cyndi Lauper. Why is whoever, either Warner Bros, or Universal, because they already have that with Spotify. They don't want to make their own one. It's expensive. Now,
right.
That's the other thing. Clearly, I'm sure there's some technical difficulty here that I don't fully understand, but I just feel like, and this is general, like this is kind of how Blue Sky works, right? You can have a federated social media platform with different servers. Mastodon is like this too, I think, right? So I just wonder whether some of the power of platforms, if we're getting to a point where it's possible to operate in a more decentralized way on the internet, and if you were able to operate on a more decentralized way, maybe you could have something more ethical. Look, say it's somehow connected to blockchain and will just get funded.
What do you call that? Tech scamming? Is that what you're calling it?
Yeah, tech scamming. Just say blockchain disruption, AI.
I think you actually said tech scamming too loud in Burp Castle, and that's what got you kicked out.
It's not for me.
We have to go back.
It's not for me.
Not
it's not
for you.
Look, and I respect it. It's okay to have spaces that aren't for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Spotify and Deerhoof.
Like Spotify and Deerhoof.
Well, I guess we'll put a bow on this one. I think that was a fun exercise in trying to work our way out of a windowless room when it comes to figuring out alternatives for ethical streaming. And I think it is interesting that
I have another idea.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You have something that's just the good bands, the good uns, right?
Yeah, we'll call it that. The good uns.
You just have the good uns, and all the major label bad uns, you just use AI to generate songs that are like them.
Yeah.
Like
good.
like instead of
Like
Rolling
Simply
Stones
Red,
song, honky tonk person.
Person.
You know?
Yeah.
Wild Ponies.
Rolling back the year.
Yeah.
Not years.
Yeah, rolling back the year.
Yeah. Free birdies. Okay. And on that note, music by bird language. Please subscribe to our newsletter, moneyfornothing.substack.com.
We write things all the time there now. Some of which are not related to the episode. So if you're not subscribed, you're missing out.
You're a fool. And be back sooner or later. Thanks for listening. Bye.